For president in 2024, let's continue to run through the candidates. As always, we're going to use the JSM model, John Stuart Mill, and we're going to try to make sure that we look at it from both sides. Look at the candidate from a balanced point of view. So Vivek Ramaswamy, born in Cincinnati, Ohio, he is the youngest candidate, a millennial, national junior tennis star, Harvard, successful investor, almost seems like a character out of Infinite Jest. One of his big talking points is he is anti-woke. He is for free speech. Some people say, oh, what's the big deal? Well, here is his explanation of that big deal. When you limit speech and you say certain people can't talk, then you no longer have a democracy. A democracy is based on the people being equal, everyone having an opportunity to say things. If certain people can't speak, then you no longer have a democracy. If only certain people are allowed to speak and carry the conversation, then you have a country that's not ruled by all, it's ruled by few, or you have an oligarchy. Now, the argument against that will be that, well, you can't let people say certain things because they could be dangerous. Well, then how do we define what's dangerous? And you might say, well, Oliver Wendell Holmes defined what was dangerous in the Shank case by saying you can't shout fire in a crowded movie theater. That was Oliver Wendell Holmes' interpretation of the Shank case 100 years ago. Does that still stand today? Is that still a valid criticism? Maybe, possibly, but yeah, that would be the argument against his anti-woke view. But again, he says that when you limit free speech and you limit freedoms of some, you no longer have a country of the people. You're going to have a country of the few that are allowed to speak. He also, in terms of anti-woke, is very much in favor of merit over identity politics. He believes that jobs and opportunities should be given to the strongest, the best, the hardest working, and they should not be given to people based on specific characteristics, be it skin color or gender or you name it. He thinks that we should reward people based on their work rather than their appearance. So let's go a little bit deeper into that. So he is very much against identity politics, which would be to help, for example, we have programs in this country that help certain people out, struggling individuals, people who have been given an uneven lot in our society. And so we set together our government certain specific aids and benefits to people based on sometimes skin color, based on income. Now, the argument against giving this aid, the argument against the government getting involved in the economy and in institutions and choosing some groups over the other based on specific needs is that you then are creating a sense of reverse discrimination when you do identity politics. He's in favor of merit over identity politics because with identity politics, you tend to create a reverse discrimination. You find one group that's being treated unequally, and in order to make it equal, you then have to treat another group unequally. So you're going to end inequality by treating people unequal. You're going to help one group by hurting another group. So then it kind of doesn't make any sense. That's one of the criticisms of that program. So he says, hey, let's just reward people based on merit and stop picking and choosing, and because that just leads to more inequality. Well, the problem with that then would be if you do go back to a merit-based system, you still have people in our society that are disadvantaged and they're going to need help. So what do you do if you say, well, we're going to get rid of all of these affirmative action programs and we're going to treat everyone the same? Well, what about those who struggle? What if those are born in terrible situations? You're just going to leave them to fall apart? So then you say, well, no, we're going to help them out. Well, then if you help them out, you're going to bring back the reverse discrimination. So you're probably saying, well, what's the answer? And so we go to our old friend, Thomas Sowell, and there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. He's clearly fine going with the merit system and not necessarily being able to help some of the disadvantaged people, which is kind of the opposite of where we are right now in America, where we're much more in the situation where our government is adjusting the laws and policies to help specific people, and then also creating a lot of reverse discrimination, which he doesn't think is very healthy for the economy. He's also anti-big government. I mean, he's the Republican candidate. That's pretty normal. He believes that big regulations and big government hinders business. And he does come from a business background as an investor, also an investor in the pharmaceutical industries, who has to deal with the FDA and big giant government institutions that create all kinds of regulations. Now, the opposite side of that is, if you take off these regulations from the corporations, if you take off these regulations on the American individuals, then through deregulation, you could possibly lead to pollution, you could lead to corruption, you could see a bigger divide occur in America, where we could go through another Gilded Age if we aren't already in another Gilded Age. So that's the argument against removing regulation. He clearly is for going with a smaller government, getting the government off of his back, allowing businesses to grow, allowing businesses to succeed, allowing Americans to make their own choices. Again, the argument against that is, as you get rid of deregulation, or as you deregulate, you could cause bigger problems. He is also very much anti-China, and so he will often talk about Baizu, which is the Chinese term for, it's a derogatory term used to describe white, liberal, woke Americans. It's them making fun of woke Americans. Yeah, the Chinese actually have a term for it, and that should tell you enough right there. So let's break down his anti-China stance and why it's such a big deal to him. But before we get into that, we really just need to understand the relationship between the U.S. and China. And for the most part, we don't really get along. So if we just go to post-World War II, America supported the capitalist leadership in China. Unfortunately, that was a corrupt leadership. It failed. The communists took over. And then about 20 years after that, there was a detente. There's an easing of relationships under Nixon, and we sort of kind of get along, and that's kind of where we've been, sort of kind of getting along, but not trusting each other. Technically, we're still enemies, and we still do plenty of things to harm each other. There has not really been a resolution. They're communists. We're supposed to be capitalists. Let's explain that before we get into what Vivek believes. So capitalism is a free market economy. It is free of government coercion. It is free of government manipulation. The consumers, the producers, are allowed to choose and make decisions. Now, we're not completely a free market anymore, but we'll just go ahead and put ourselves in that category of, that's what we aim to be, where the government is not manipulating the economy, and where people can make their own choices, be it through business, through consumption, through production, distribution, you name it. Whereas communism is a command economy. The economy, the production, the consumption is commanded by specific individuals. A command economy is a plan against competition, is what Friedrich Hayek would tell you. So one economy, ours, is where you're free to make the decisions, whereas a command economy is commanded. It is directed by a few individuals. So again, anyone chooses. Command economy, few choose for you. And for the most part, most Americans see this. Yeah, I want to make my decisions on what I'm going to do for my life. I want to make decisions on how many kids I want to have. I want to make decisions on where I'm going to live and what job I'm going to have, and or what kind of goods we're going to produce. Seems like a no-brainer. There's never been a problem in America. But that has changed lately, where we have slowly, incrementally stepped towards a society where we are embracing the few making the decisions for us, the few deciding what products will be on the shelves, the few deciding what businesses will stay in business, the few deciding who will receive benefits and who will pay for those benefits. In a capitalist society where anyone chooses, win or lose, it's on you. And there is not, in a completely free market society where the government is not getting involved, where the government is not intervening with businesses and individuals. If you make poor decisions, then you lose. And if you make great decisions, then you get really rich. Whereas in a command economy, they pick the winners. Free market, you get to decide, you get to make the choices. It's not very equal, but you can win or you can lose. Whereas in a command economy, the few that are in control of designing the economy, the few that are in control of deciding what crops to plant and when to plant them and where to plant them and what businesses to run and who's going to work in those businesses, they are going to pick the people. They are going to handpick, cherry pick, and design the winners, and they're going to design who the losers are. It's great if you get picked, but if you don't, well, then you just have no choice. At least in a capitalist society, you have a fighting chance. This is what Vivek would tell you. Now, someone who's against Vivek, probably could give you a more fitting example of a command economy, but that is pretty apt in that, at the very least, even the most left-wing Marxist, postmodern thinker would understand that a communist economy is commanded by the few. So, like I've been saying for the longest time, the capitalist society in America has been winning. People prefer the capitalist society. People don't want a command economy. People don't want very few choosing things for you. They don't want an oligarchy. We want a democracy. We want capitalism. We want a free market. We want opportunity. We want freedom. But that has changed. So, we look and see what China is doing. Now we pull in the anti-woke thing. We pull in the anti-China thing. So China working with American corporations. This is his big idea. This is kind of different than a lot of the other candidates. Vivek is very deep in the weeds. So China has made offers to all the American corporations because China has a giant market. There's an opportunity to make a lot of money in China, which you name it, they all want to go there. They encourage American corporations to be woke. Okay, follow with me. Oh, what? China's not telling Nike to be woke. Nike's being woke because they want to be woke. It's not true. And Vivek breaks this down in his book about how they reward the American businesses that are woke. They give them more opportunities. They give them chances in China. They open their doors. They do not open the doors to the anti-woke. You can see he gives plenty of examples. Now, why would they do this? Well, because when Nike talks about America's inequality, when these massive corporations do whatever woke thing they're doing and pointing out the flaws in the American government, pointing out the flaws in the American system and highlighting the inequality, that makes America weak. That makes our government look weak. That hurts the American institutions. It hurts the idea of free markets and freedom of choice. All of that is harmed when American corporations are blasting on the TV, America's unequal, America's unequal, this country's bad. And that filters into people's minds. And then now it's no longer just the corporations saying everything is unequal, everything's unfair, America's bad, America's bad. The American people start to accept it. And so the American people are reacting to that. And that slowly, it's not even slowly, now it's rapidly, that destabilizes the American system. That destabilizes the American government. That destabilizes the American institutions. It delegitimizes them. And so from outside and now from within, we are tearing the government and our nation apart. And it's as simple as the Chinese telling these companies, be woke, spread that message, because they know what that's going to do. They know what that poison can do to the American system. Now, at the same time, they're also telling Nike and the corporations, don't say anything about the Uyghurs. You cannot say anything. The NBA players, you cannot talk about the Uyghur concentration camps. Not allowed to talk about it. Not allowed to mention it. Just supposed to sell shoes in there. So China's human rights violations, the American corporations, silent. America's inequality, the corporations are running commercials. Corporations are paying money to advertise our inequality. Meanwhile, they won't say anything about China. And why does Nike do that? Well, because Nike probably doesn't care about the inequality. Nike probably care, and maybe they do. Maybe they're complete. Well, it's hard to believe at this point that they are ignorant or naive to think that they not know what's going on. They're silent about one issue because they want to make money. And they talk about the other issue because they want to make money. They're being rewarded to talk about the inequality in America, and they're also being rewarded, in a way, coerced, to not talk about the Uyghurs. If they cared about human rights, if Nike, if Starbucks, if Apple, if Walmart really cared about human inequality, then they would talk about it in America and they would talk about it in China. But they do not. So, and the argument will be like, oh, this is a little out there. Seems a little crazy, a little tinfoil hat. Come on, Vivek. It's just woke stuff. This is just that internet culture war that's going on. It's not really a big deceptive plot by the Chinese to overthrow the United States government. Well, Vivek's response would be, look, the CIA has destabilized enemy governments the exact same way. We have these color revolutions all throughout. These things have been happening since the 1950s, all throughout. We've been doing the same playbook, same game plan, playbook. Now it's being used on us. And we say, oh, that's crazy. What do you think they thought was going on in Iran and in the Middle Eastern countries, in the South American countries, and all the places where we were fighting communism? What do you think is going on in Eastern Europe? You don't think we do the same thing? Oh no, that's crazy. It would never happen. Revolutions just naturally happen. There's no government agencies involved in them. There's no CIA or FBI behind anything. No, it's just naturally, organically, the people rise up, and which is a little more crazy. All right, so going back to Vivek and his anti-China stance, and I mean, you can see it. We are less capitalist than we ever were. We are less democratic than we've ever been. We are slowly and truly moving more towards a command economy. Whether you like using the word communism or not, it is a command economy in that the few are making decisions that control all. Is this a free market where everyone is pretty much free? You're not going to be over-regulated, or the government's not going to pick winners, and the government's not going to favor this corporation over that small business, and the government's not going to say, well, these guys get to stay in business, but you got to shut down. No, that's all gone. We've already seen firsthand that the government will step in and say, these guys get to make money, and you got to close your doors. These guys stay in business, and you don't. It's clear. This group of people is going to get this set of privileges, and this group of people is not going to get that set of privileges. That was unthinkable 70 years ago, that the government would be that involved in dictating your life. But now it's here. The frog has slowly been cooked, and we just accept it. And some people will think that, hey, look, we're fighting for equality. Maybe we do need a command economy, because if you leave it up to us, if you do have a true free market economy where the people can win and lose and people can make their own decisions, you're not going to have equality. If you have a merit-based system and you have a free market, there's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. Hopefully you have a government that's kind of involved, that can kind of help people out. But in a pure free market economy, free of government involvement, intervention, interruption, you're going to have inequality. And some Americans are just never going to want that. They want equality. They want fairness. And the only way that they see that they can get there is through a command economy where big government commands, designs, directs the economy in different ways so that it's constantly pulling levers to make things more fair for everyone. And in their hearts, they believe that if you get the right people in the government and in these institutions, and they're pulling the right levers, and they're really smart, and they're making the right decisions, we can create a utopia. We can create heaven on earth. We can create Candyland. But the reality is that as much as you try, as much as you think, and we have plenty of experience now over the last century of this experiment taking place, where we abandon free market principles and we abandon the invisible hand of the free market, and we go with these technocrats and engineers and mainly politicians who are going to make the decisions of how the economy is going to work, how our institutions are going to work, how our schools are going to work, how our life is going to operate from day to day, because they know what's best for us. What often happens is, we end up in China. You have it already. It's China. You can see what's going on in China right now. Is China free? Are the people allowed to do whatever they want? Are they allowed to make all their choices? Or does the government direct almost every single? You've seen the videos out of China during the COVID period. That's what happens when you have a powerful command economy where they design all the choices. Vivek warns that we are getting there. And the anti-woke thing, being woke, is a part of slowly getting into that totalitarian communist government. Day by day, the more we allow the government to grow, the more we allow the government to be in command and to dictate our day-to-day lives, we become like 1984. We become like Big Brother. It becomes an authoritarian state. It becomes a totalitarian state where the state commands your day-to-day activities and actions. It already happens in China. It already happens in North Korea. We are headed in that direction. We're probably not headed in the Candyland direction. Now, those are all great points by Vivek. He seems like a very intelligent candidate who really understands the issues, really understands long-term planning, has plenty of experience, although he is the youngest, but he checks all the boxes. Problem is, this thing's a popularity contest, and although you might be the smartest guy in the room and maybe the most well-versed, it's going to be tough for this guy to win when we're just basically going to run a popularity contest again where people are going to shout at each other. So cool points. You introduce new points, Vivek, but man, it's going to be tough for the guy to win. All right, so meme it, as always. Explain Vivek Ramaswamy in a meme. Because if you can take one of the facts from this lesson, or you can take a fact that you find online and turn it into a meme or put it in a different type of context, maybe make a joke out of it, then you own that fact. You now solidly have comprehended that knowledge. You're applying that knowledge. Then you're on your way to go even higher up on Bloom's higher order of thinking. Maybe start evaluating, getting to analysis, getting to a creative level. So what I've got is, don't worry about nukes. It's the wokes. And so I got the crazy guy, because some people might think like, come on, is this really your big talking point, anti-woke? I think when you break it down, it does kind of make sense, but it does seem a little bit like we're drawing some lines between the cork boards, we're doing like, who's Pepe Sylvia? I don't know, but it's something you want to go into. Before you just dismiss Vivek out of hand, you probably should read his book. You probably should watch some interviews. That's the JSM model. We try to look at it from a balanced point of view. We try to look at it from both sides. Before we say, oh, this guy's a crank, let's listen to him a little bit more and see, maybe there is something there. Maybe you don't agree with him, but maybe there might be a little bit more to this corporations and the Chinese and our move towards a command economy. There could be something there, but the only way that you would know is if you allow yourself to explore all sides and be very open-minded. And if you're on the side where like, yeah, I love Vivek, well, maybe you need to also look at the other side and to see like, maybe this is a little out there. Maybe he is making a big deal out of something that's kind of more tertiary or even trivial when there's bigger issues in America. It's up to you to explore, broaden your mind, and maybe you'll become more firm in your own beliefs, or maybe you'll learn some new things. Thanks for joining me. Videos are doing well. I hope to get some more at you soon.